Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. Your presentation later on, I'll call you up in a minute. Yeah. So, just like to welcome everybody here, staff as well, and councillors. So, welcome to this Infrastructure and Planning Committee meeting, and I'll invite Councillor O'Brien to give us the karakia to open the meeting. Thanks.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tira kēnui tata. Ka tohi o te tohi anuku, ka tohi o te tohi ara. I tupu I hoko ngā pū, ngā wea, ngā more, ngā pūkina, ngā wānanga, ngā tauira. A tēnei te kimi no te rapu noa, I te take, I te ahuru no nārangi tūhā. Whakaia kia rite, uhi, wero, tau mai te Māori haumi e hui e... Kia ora tata.
So I've just got to read this out if you don't mind. It's about the live streaming and what's happening. So I'll start with this. Whakatane District Council are now live streaming our council and standing committee meetings held in our Totara room within the council building. The webcast will live stream directly to council's website and YouTube channel in real time. The purpose of streaming our meetings is to provide greater access to council debate, decision making and to encourage transparency. For those members of the public here today, all care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, by remaining in the public gallery, it is understood your consent has been given, that your presence is inadvertently broadcast. Please be aware that the microphones in our room are sensitive to noise, so please remain quiet throughout the meeting unless asked to speak. I would just suggest that all phones are on silent as well, please. So in terms of health and safety, in case of an emergency, please follow the building wardens or make your way to the nearest exit. The meeting point is located across the road in Peace Park, which is just over here by the museum. Bathroom facilities are located opposite the Chambers foyer entrance, where you came in the main door over here of the Margaret Margie Court. So can you hear us at the back there? Thank you. Right, so first item is apologies, and we have an apology from Nandor and apologies for lateness from Councillor Boynton. So Councillor Tanjos' apology for the meeting, lateness for Councillor Boynton and I understand the Chief Executive. So someone like to move those be accepted? Mayor Emick, Councillor Isles, all those in favour please say aye. Aye. Thanks, carried. Thank you. Are there any acknowledgements or tributes? Any conflicts of interest? So item 4 is the public forum. So Tui, if you'd like to come forward and give us your presentation please.
I have a mic here, just in case you can't hear me, but I don't want to be seen to be yelling at you fellas, even though I'm passionate about this take that I'm presenting. It's similar to, it's the same as what I presented at the LT submission, and it's in a petition form, and it's an objection to Shore Road, Mill Road, roundabout connection, on the grounds that it's not the safe option, as I explained at the submission, and it's not the cheapest option, and there is support in the community for it. So we have got signatures now from the community. And I was concentrating more on our Shore Road residents, and there was a big support. But once it got out there, there was more support, and there's even more support. So if I would have made a bigger effort, you would have got more than the 87 that we have here. There are other options we believe that are of safer means. And if you are not aware, the stock bank that you want to build over and build that bridge to connect to Shore Road, the stock bank is contaminated. So the bioremediation program back some years ago, which I know John Puller was our chairperson of, didn't include the floodplain, so the contaminations are still there. I have heard from a few of the trustees that are part of that land, and they're not supportive of a bridge or the land to be used. So I have, on the petition, Charlie Blewett, who signed it, and I didn't go. He said to go see the other trustees, but there's uniform decisions amongst them that they don't support using their land, but they can talk to that. And the SWAP chairperson, who's leading, a lot of the bioremediation and the issues with contamination and the soils, he's also signed it, and he's also so going forward, yes, it is going to impact our Shore Road residents and our property if you were to go ahead. And there is safe options and there is cheaper options, as we've detailed, and that is widening probably the current intersection where we go out in Shore Road, making it wider, or putting up traffic lights. It's an unnecessary expense. There is a need for a bridge, another bridge into town, because if you would have seen this morning, it was packed, and it's the main entrance. Every morning it's packed. You are in line up, and it's only going to get worse if you're going to allow for more subdivisions out the west way. It's only going, the traffic problem's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So please think seriously about the funds that you will use to build a unnecessary bridge across to Shore Road and an unnecessary additional road along where it impact our property and some of the new residents of Shore Road. And when they built there, they didn't anticipate, they weren't told that there was going to be a road that will impact their property and the value of their property. We didn't know when we supported Barney Gray that this would happen, because this is not a new thing. It has been a proposal before we lived there, and this is about 27 years before we lived there. That same sort of proposal was to put some sort of roadway there, but that didn't happen for good reason too. So I just hope you think a little bit hard about how you spend the funds, and is it really necessary, and think of what's going to happen in the future with more homes being built out that way. Is it really the best thing to spend your money on? Is it the best option? I mean, we've got people who are willing to help your committee to go and walk around and show you possibilities. Please consult with us. None of the ones that we approached were aware of this, other than when I made them aware. So, yeah, consultation is a key. Otherwise, you might end up having a war. We might have a war of neighbours, and they're very close neighbours. We don't want to see that, because they're very passionate. The neighbours are on Shore Road are very passionate, and they've said they're very passionate and happy to do whatever they need to do, whether it be lying on the road to stop anything. So we don't want wars around Shore Road or the new subdivision.
Are you happy to take some questions?
Yes.
Mayor Luca?
Tui, you talked about the deficiencies of the consultation. What were they, and what do you think we could have done better?
Well, we'll start to see it in the LTP. Not everybody looks there, Not everybody's interested in that. It's going door to door.
So what could we have done better? How could we have done it, in your opinion?
Well, you know where the affected people are. Knock on our door. Come and talk to us, please. I didn't have that.
Just one more. if I may. What's your understanding of the contamination on the stock bank that you talked about? Is that
It's very high. There have been tests, and we have that within the bioremediation project committee. I think you can get that from Brendan Love, who was the lead coordinator. John will have all those contacts, or Bruce Craig from
so what you're saying is that the remediation didn't completely...
Remediation didn't include the stock banks. So what's actually happened is that the two universities, which is Massey and Waikato University, have been doing trials of in situ, of trying to treat it in situ. So there is an area along that stock bank closer to, I think it's Allied, well, used to be Allied Contract. On the stock bank, there's some trees that they're doing a trial there. And it's not a short-term, it's a long-term thing, so it's looking 25 years.
You're talking about dioxin anyway, I suppose.
Yeah, breaking it down so that the soil becomes usable.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Councillor James?
Yeah, thanks for this, Joey. It's good. I note here, because I mean I've talked to a few of the residents in the subdivision,
Yes.
and they're quite keen for the new road, and I see in your petition there are no, I don't see any signatures from the subdivision in here.
No,
Is there a reason there? Or?
because they did the submission so that you folks would listen to them to do that. And I'm aware of it, but the neighbours across the road, the new ones that are built on Shore Road, weren't aware of it. So I did, when he put a copy in my mailbox, I did ring him and I did say to him that you haven't considered what impact that has on us, and you haven't considered the other neighbours in this neighbourhood. You only new to this area, you've only been here probably not even a year, and you're doing this without consultation of the ones that have been living here for a very long time. And that's longer than us. You know, we've been there for 27 years. We've got the Joneses who also signed it, and the Julians down the road, and there's a lot of been there for many years. So they didn't consider the impact in their consideration of do they support it, and they don't support it. So that's what I'm saying, is that we're going to have a war against neighbours if we aren't listened to. And it's a good reason why we aren't happy with it. There's other options, and it's going to impact on us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Tui. Thanks for coming back to talk to us about this. My question is perhaps for the General Manager. It was my understanding that the proposed roundabout on the Mill Road intersection is an NZT, a Waka Kotahi project. So it's not a council project at all. There were just some additional discussions about that being an option, so nothing has been confirmed?
Nothing's been confirmed, but we have put some consideration of it into a long-term plan, and possibly it's worth taking a step back 12 months, right? So we had Waka Kotahi come to us with a speed safety improvement infrastructure program, which was wire ropes all the way down between Whakatane and Awakiri. At the same time, that was all 100 kilometres an hour there, right? So through the consultation with the community, we'd identified, or Waka Kotahi had identified, that actually at 100 kilometres an hour, Shore Road and Mill Road were of some safety concerns. So we encouraged Waka Kotahi to think about Mill Road as a potential option for a roundabout, because they'd only thought about a roundabout at Thornton, Te Rahui and White Pine. And so they looked at the data and the number of near misses and issues and feedback from the community and said, yeah, that's a good idea. Because of what they were planning with the Wire Road, around left in, left out at Shore Road, which would mean that anybody coming out of town to get into the Shore Road would need to go all the way down to the Thornton Road roundabout, turn around and come back to go into Shore Road. So that's when we thought, is it an option to connect into the Mill Road roundabout that Waka Kotahi are doing? And so the idea was just came off the back of what Waka Kotahi had signalled that they were going to do. Since national government's come in, actually what I should say, before that happened, the speed limit was reduced down to 80. So I think a lot of the safety risks and stuff like that have reduced. At 100 kilometres an hour, the safety risks at the Mill Road intersection were quite high. At 80, they've reduced, and I think, and then, you know, when Nationals come in, they're not sure whether the safety improvement program is going to happen or not, so we know we're stuck with 80 kilometres an hour, and we don't know whether any of that other infrastructure stuff's going to happen. So at the moment, we don't see any significant safety risks presenting themselves, and I think touching on Tui's point about more and more subdivisions and development happening, that's going to become more and more of an urban environment. And so with an urban environment, you've got slower traffic and, you know, more ingress, egress into side roads, etc. So I think it basically changes the whole scope of what we were initially, you know, all the plans were put together on a 100 kilometre an hour road. I don't know if those risks are still present anymore. So it was more about making sure that there's a placeholder should Waka Kotahi carry on with the plans that they had in place, that we could have some budget to support. So it's not committed or anything at this stage, and the placeholder is later in the LTP.
And just supplementary, Jeff, that's all right. And the funding that we do have in the LTP is whatever gets developed by Waka Kotahi, is that, because it's state highway, that's 100% funded by them, and ours was to do some connecting things. All right, thank you.
So our contribution wouldn't be the roundabout, it'd just be the crossing over the bridge. But again, that, you know, it's got to go through a number of business cases before that would happen, and it's probably in not this LTP, the next 3 years, the next one, and that would need to go through a funding approval process like all of our Waka Kotahi budgets. So if the environment changes and there's no safety risks and Waka Kotahi aren't going to do a Mill Road roundabout, then we wouldn't be doing the roundabout by ourselves or the crossing over the canal by ourselves.
What I'm concerned is, if you don't remove it from that LT plan now, I'm going to have to come back in years to come and do this presentation again. So, you know, what if I die and then it's overlooked? I'm just being, you know, dramatic here. But that's my concern. If you don't remove it, you know, I'm asking for you to remove it.
Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, thanks, Tui. Can I just go back to what Bevan said and just, I thought that whole Mill Road roundabout, Bevan, was about the fact that vehicles pulling out of Mill Road were having to park in the middle of the road, and that part was designed wrong. So it should be a slip lane, but cars park there, and when it's got enough room for 5 cars, and when cars park behind them, they can't see behind them to actually know when to pull out. They can't judge it, and that's becoming really dangerous. I also know that the mill owner at one stage was saying that if we didn't get a roundabout there, he was going to spend $3 million and bring the traffic through the hub in between Bunnings and Postie Plus and come out through that roundabout. And I thought that was, which would be disaster, and I thought that was one of the main reasons for that Mill Road intersection. But on the other side of it too, I know that there's been 2 deaths that I know of on that corner of Shore Road, and one was a guy I worked with, Bruce Thompson. His wife sadly passed away there because as she's waiting to turn in, someone came in behind her, and there was one about 4 years ago, a really nasty one.
2 years.
2 years ago. So my understanding is this isn't about speed or anything like that. It's about, because Councillor Deputy Mayor Imik and I a few years ago went and door knocked all that area, probably not your house, when the council was looking at bringing your area into the Whakatane Ahopi ward rather than being in the Rangataiki ward. And when we door knocked all those people and asked them, have you got any preference? They said, we don't really care where we are, we just need you to fix up the intersection. Because her woman coming back from picking up their school, sitting in the middle of the road and almost scared, petrified, someone's going to go up their backside. So to me, this is, and whether it's 80 k's or 100 k's, it can still be damaging. So to me, this is this is a whole safety issue, eh? And I think you'd agree with that, wouldn't you?
Well, yes, I've been on the Road Safety Committee. I'm not sure you know my background, but I used to work for Wikiora Public Health, and I was one of the representatives for Wikiora Public Health on the Road Safety Committee for many years. And it's always been a concern. We had put proposal through to Whakakotai or Land Transport at that stage to reduce speed, put in lots of recommendations, but they were in charge of that area. Basically, it is dangerous, and the Mill Road will fix, the roundabout will fix up that area there, but we need a Shore Road one because it's not going to get any smaller. There's a roadway that's going to meet up with the other subdivisions if they go ahead, so they'll be coming around, I believe. So there has got to be something happening there. I think even 80 kilometres an hour is still a bit too fast. 70 is more safer, but it'll always be an issue. And yes, you as a council will probably have very little say in what happens on the roundabout and proposal, but something needs to happen. I agree. But back then, when those incidents happened, those fatalities happened, it was 100 k's an hour. Okay. John Puller would have known that when we tried to get the road speed down and doing the bioremediation, that took quite a bit to do that.
So you haven't seen any accidents out there since it's been 80 k's?
No, but it's still, it's still scary, and I'm very scared for those ones at Mill Road. When they're in the middle, it is scary for us going by, and it must be even scarier for them. And for us to go out to Tauranga Way, we have to go and sit in the middle too. So there is a need to do some changes. And I don't think Whakatane likes traffic lights, but a traffic light would control all of that instead of a roundabout.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Bevan another question? With that new subdivision, will it have an entry-exit to Hoona Road?
My understanding is I think it was going through Hoona Road.
Okay, thank you.
But there's quite a bit of development.
Yep.
So
okay, thank you.
There's another subdivision before the one where the Julian's farm is. So there's another one before that, the other owner of the other land is. And the roadways are really set.
Sorry, can I ask?
Yeah, so just one last question, Councillor Ringia.
I suppose it's going, by the sound of what Bevan's saying, it's going to be some time before we get to doing inside of there. But working inside of there is there a core group, besides doing the door-to-door knocking in terms of communication, that the council would be able to, so that messaging can go out. Is there a core group within the Shore Road community for their communication to happen? Most of our rules, we have community boards or little things, and then we can disseminate, get the message out there. In your fellows community, is there a core group there?
They're getting very elderly. Our
retired.
King of the road is Alan Jones, and his wife she's that, you know, very elderly, and so we used to have regular potluck dinners, and since they've been a bit unwell, we sort of haven't done that for the last few years, but it's mainly there, we go to their home, and I could make our home available if the need be.
You spoke of the committee that you fellas are on, that you're on?
No,
Oh, I put
no,
you on.
no, it was just a little, oh, no, not for our Shore Road, but we just had like a family gathering.
I suppose it's just trying to have a different. That sounds like
Within Shore Road, you know, it's not like the new subdivision where there's 70 homes. There's only a smaller residency. Yeah. And I can, you know, I'm in contact with them all. They all know me now. So if you want to use me as the main person to leave it, it's a lot of responsibility.
oh, sorry. What I'm probably looking at is we've mentioned about the development is going to increase, and so whether it's a starting of a planting of a thought that, hey, our area is going to expand in the future, maybe we should be looking at something doing it come in. Maybe something, because you know it's going to expand.
It is.
And so communication is one of the things that
It's something, but I'm not willing to run with it.
Oh, no.
Myself.
no,
And
that's right.
I do have my contacts in the community, and you see in the petition, we've got the Kohanga signing, we've got the Marae reps signing. So it goes wider than just Shore Road, because they've been around for many years. Those ones in the subdivision, if you go and have a look at their ethnicity, they're not all from, you know, they're new, all of them are new to the community.
Thank you.
So they're not in my normal association.
No, so one.
We've got one final question. What I'm hearing is that you think something needs to be done at Shore Road. So and that the challenges are still present even at 80 kilometres an hour, and that with further development they're possibly going to exacerbate. So rather than taking the budget out, would you like us to rename the budget?
I would like you to rename the budget and plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, replan.
So instead of it being Shore Road, Mill Road roundabout, we could call it Shore Road, Mill Road intersections, because we've got a fair bit of business case and investigation work to go to, spatial plan work that's going on, and then an understanding of the developments and actually changing environment. I think it would be useful to keep some budget for investigation and potential works. So I think possibly a renaming might be more appropriate.
Yes. And removing off that desire to do that bridge across.
Yeah, thank you.
Tui, just to wind up, you're comfortable with that outcome, and we'll keep in touch and keep you in the loop.
And you know, use me if you would like to get a bit of communication in that area. I do have a wide link that I can get for you, Sydney, out there.
Okay. Thank you for what you do in the community as well.
Thank you for your time.
So, welcome, Councillor Boynton.
My apologies.
We got that, so you're all right. And also, I'd just like to acknowledge Chair of the Whakatane Hopi Community Board, which I had my glasses on to notice that it was, but there we go. Welcome, Caroline. Okay, so we're on to item 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes. So are there any corrections from the previous meeting minutes? If there are not, we have the resolution here that the minutes of the Infrastructure and Planning Committee meeting held on the 11th of April 2024 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor James, Councillor Wiles. Any debate? There being none, all those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, thank you. So item 6 is the reports, infrastructure and planning report, and that's with you, Bevan. It's on pages 17 to 27 of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read and be happy to answer any questions. I do want to point out that in the completed projects, we have blueberry curves. So we haven't completed the infrastructure upgrades, but we've completed the process around rationalising what we're going to do there. So that's the speed change, and when we implement, or when we go through the speed management plan, that'll be the first one that we implement.
Thank you. Any questions of clarification? Luca.
For the Kipper Road improvements, which are on the Regional Land Transport Plan as well, given the state of the Boat Harbour project, if that were not to go ahead, would it still make any sense to spend $4 million there? And given the fact that the budget is tight, could we find better things to do with that money if the project doesn't go ahead?
Yes, in short. So there was always a need for an element of upgrade of that road with the development that's happening at Coastlands. So I think the scale and timing would be what we would change if the Boat Harbour project did proceed as quickly as we wanted it to. This is and the reason why we haven't broken ground there again is that we want to ensure that both those projects are sort of happening in parallel and enabling each other. So it is quite tied to the Boat Harbour project.
Right, so it's basically on hold there at the moment.
We're still progressing conversations and options around design and engagement. So that we are ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any further points of clarification? If not, we'll read out the recommendation. It's on page 17 of the agenda. That the Infrastructure and Planning Committee received the Infrastructure and Planning Report May 2024. We have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wiles, Councillor Boynton. So, any debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item is 6.2, the Burma Road closed landfill, which is Evan and Nigel, I understand. And that's on page 28 and 39 of the agenda.
Yeah. Over the last 3 years, we've had a number of issues present themselves at our closed landfill. We are required to have an aftercare provision and undertake monitoring and compliance requirements for all closed landfills for a period of 35 years. So this one's particularly challenging because it's on a reasonably steep slope in an environment that gets a lot of rain and a lot of water, and a culturally significant stream that it feeds into. So we've had a number of challenges over the last couple of years which have necessitated some significant investment. Most of that's been reasonably reactive. We're wanting to undertake a piece of work to be proactive and try and protect the environment from any further overflows of leachate in the future. we'll never be able to guarantee that. And that's because you just don't know the level of intensity and rainfall that we're going to get. But what we're trying to do is get ahead of it, undertake some significant capital projects to ensure that it operates more effectively, and we deal with essentially stormwater and groundwater and the impacts that that's having on the closed landfill. So it's not leachate by itself, it's response to rainfall and weather events that's creating the challenges and issues. So in front of you, you'll have the paper that's outlined some of the historic works we've undertaken, some of the challenges, some plans for the future development. We acknowledge that these plans will need some resource consent conversations, and yesterday we had a meeting with Regional Council and Ngāti Awa Farms, Ngāti Awa Group Holdings, who are owner of the farm, just to progress and see, gather thoughts. From Ngāti Awa's perspective, they were very supportive of the process and the intent behind the works. We've just got a few details to work through from a compliance perspective with Regional Council and understanding what the consent challenges may be. We have, over the last few years, acknowledged the challenges across all of our closed landfills. So we've had some issues at the Te Teko one, and we're continually revising our provision, which basically is funds that we set aside to deal with these issues when they come up. And so what we're asking is to fund these capital works out of the provision. We would normally do this as part of the program of works, but given the significance of this piece of work, the proximity to Whakatane o Hopi, and the important relationships with mana whenua, we thought that it was important to bring this across the table for your overview and approval. Happy to take any questions.
So, Jim, Nigel, you got any further to add, or you just take the questions?
Through the chair, morning everyone. No, I think basically Bevan's summed it up fine, but we're happy to take questions. Jim is basically project manager behind this because he's got the engineering qualifications, which I don't have. But between us, we're happy to take any questions you have.
I'm just wondering if you can give us an idea of what contaminants are leaching from there. I mean, you've got water leaching out, but is the contaminant load high, or what things are we monitoring? I mean, is it a danger to anybody?
No, so basically, the leachate collection system. And basically, that leachate is basically pumped into the trade waste system, and eventually goes out to oxidation ponds. The monitoring, we do have monitoring in place, which is basically the stream just outside the landfill. There is monitoring upstream, next to site, and downstream as well. So there's like 4 monitoring points on the street. There's also groundwater monitoring as well. We're basically monitoring for heavy metals, nitrates, phosphates, ammonia, and suspended solids. That's one's come to mind. Yeah.
So the load is quite high, is it, for heavy metals and stuff?
The actual this is one of the issues we discussed with the Regional Council yesterday. We're not actually taking any at the moment any active monitoring of the leachate that's pumped into the system. So that's one of the things we want to do to get a better picture of what's happening. The monitoring we have in place of the boreholes and the downstream environment has always been, with a few small exceptions, been below the trigger levels of the consents. And even when we had the overflow events, we did full assessments and basically The WSP consultants did those, and they concluded that there was minimal to no effect of the overflow. Because when there has been an overflow, it's flowing into a large stormwater pond, so there's a dilution factor there. And we've put, since we've also put new controls in that we can now isolate that stormwater pond and empty the pond should a future overflow happen. So we've put further controls in there, but the monitoring in the environment is generally below those trigger points at the moment. But what these works will also allow us to do is to get a better picture of what's happening. Because when these overflows occur, when we're not sure exactly how much stormwater is contributing to them and what the delayed reaction of the groundwater is. So these works will allow further monitoring so we can determine exactly what is going on. And discussions with the regional council yesterday were along those lines, that we get a temporary consent to allow us to do all that monitoring, get a better picture of what's actually happening, what's actually causing the overflows, then we can actually guarantee the sort of longevity of what we're putting in there.
Okay, so just to get it clear, you want to improve your monitoring, but the monitoring you've been doing is not suggesting that there's any danger from the leachate at the moment.
Not at the moment.
So at the moment we're monitoring the freshwater environment. We're not monitoring the leachate.
Oh, well, that's what I was asking about, the actual...
So the limits in the freshwater environment around protecting freshwater species.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So that's one of the reasons why we keep leachate as separate as we can.
Right.
So it would be.
So we don't know much about the leachate?
No. So that's part of the testing.
Right.
So we want to test it in dry weather, so we know what we're dealing with on a normal day-to-day basis. And we want to test what's coming out of the landfill in a wet weather event, because that tells you, what is the base load, what is the dilution factor when there's wet weather. So we want to implement basically 5 or 6 triggers and intervention plans through this process.
So we've got a few gaps to fill first before we're at that point of saying let's spend 800,000.
We do it all at the same time, part of the process. So you put the monitoring in when you're doing the upgrades.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dennis?
Thank you. I was just wondering if we could throw that map on 38 up on the screen, because there's some questions I want to ask about that. In the big square area to the right, is that the actual leaching pond or is that the dump? Not very clear.
Big square area to the right is the leachate pond.
Okay. And so I did read this, but I don't understand it. So from that, we are going to bleed off some of the water into where that scruffy dome thing is. Is that right?
Do you have an explanation?
Please.
Yes. Good morning, councillors and through the chair. Yes. So at the moment, inside that clear square is the existing lined leachate pond, and that's about 380 cubic metre volume. At the moment, what happens is when the leachate flows into the little pump station, which is up in the right-hand corner,
Top right-hand
corner, that overflows into the leachate pond, and then that when the leachate pond gets full, if we don't have sucker trucks there or can't contain it, it then flows overland into the stormwater pond. So what we are proposing to do is to increase that leachate capture area. So that's what you see, that sort of hash line right around the outside. That's going to be a sheet pile wall.
Yep.
And that then does the two things. Stops the stormwater get into there, but it also gives us much more volume to store. And then our, and I'll say little pump, will then be able to slowly over a long period, 24/7, we'll be able to pump that lake down. At the moment, we don't have that luxury of having a big capture area. So that's perfect. And we have to get that pump, for many reasons it's not really suitable for what's coming. So leachate is a very gooey, bubbly sort of stuff, and it's a suction pump that's in the sump, and it's getting a lot of air in the system, and it very quickly reduces its performance, and you have to continually be going back there and pulling it apart and getting the goo out of it and running the air out of the line and then starting again, sort of thing. So all of our upgrades are proposed to tidy up all of those operations, and we'll move that pump down to the bottom left-hand corner. And so leachate will still come into the capture area, go around into that chamber that's down the bottom left.
Yeah.
And the first exercise is the new pump will drain it to that box thing over sort of middle of the left-hand side of the drawing, and that pumps it into the town sewer. Then as the level rises, it'll then flow back into the leachate pond and rise in level until it gets to a point where it could overflow, but just below that we will then have the scruffy dome, which is at the top of the chamber, and then that has a measuring device in it which will tell us how much is going into the stormwater pond. Now the stormwater pond can be controlled, so it's like a secondary capture pond. The first one fills up. I think probably when you go back in the day in 2008 when conditions were set, one of the conditions said that there was no leachate discharged. But I think it was probably had this perfect world thought that the pump was going to pump it all to the town sewer, and the stormwater was then just going to go down the stream. But because the landfill was an old-fashioned landfill without a base, without the high. You've got to be upfront with landfills in the modern day. You've got to install all your capture areas, your lining has got to be sealed. Unfortunately, over time, we've been getting minute amounts, I would say, of leachate just going out in the stormwater system. So this is to stop that.
So from the scruffy dome top to, there's a pipe going straight up to a rip-rack line to overflow outlet. Is that overflow outlet going in stormwater?
Into the stormwater pond.
And what's going in there? Is there there's no leachate at all going in there?
Not on a normal basis.
Okay, so if the leachate comes around there, where is that? So you're saying that ends up in our sewage ponds?
The line that goes to that rectangular box section,
yes,
to the right, yes, there will be a pump mounted there, and it will be below the level of the intake, so it's going to be a positive suction pump, which is one of the problems that we mentioned earlier about the bubbly stuff. So that will then pump it into the town sewer. Now, sadly, the volume, with rainfall, as you know, you get a huge amount of rain and then it dies off. Well, there's nowhere in the world we could have a pump that matched that. So we need to have a storage. And, if we tried to put a bigger pump, we've gone right into detail to see what's the max we can put into the sewer, because the last thing we want is for sewage to be overflowing out of manholes in our system, because this has to go all the way around the back of the Strand to the McAllister pump station, which is then pumped to the ponds. So, the pump has been, we've picked a special pump they use in mines and things like that for pumping more solids, and it also has the ability to boost up and down so we can move air pockets in the line. So we've done a bit of hard work to see what's the best thing to do there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rangiaho.
My God. I suppose I was just going back what Bevan was talking about around the freshwater, Bevan, and with the leachate. My head has gone into probably the measurement of the streams. Is there any way that things start to get into our waterways and to our streams? The leaching.
Yeah.
So we got Wairere stream, we got Waiewe stream, and so what are the...
So it
was something around the measurement of Forty Manoti Wai, and where does that land in terms of that leaching?
So we start sampling all the time.
Yes.
And when you have massive amounts of rain that
That's right.
completely inundate the system, you can get overflows. And we
That's right.
sample then as well. The saving grace, I mean, it's not great, but the saving grace is that it's massively diluted by all of the stormwater and rainwater. So what we're proposing to do is build extra capacity, extra storage, extra points where we can intervene and suck out water, because we don't want leachate going into the freshwater environment. And definitely in an uncontrolled way that has happened before. So we're trying to take 5 steps forward here to make sure that we manage our responsibilities and leachate better.
Just that, please, but I think it's important to note that basically if there was an excess of flow in the leachate system, there would be a number of alarms triggering. There will be telemetry within all these works. So as soon as it got to a level where it was overflowing from the chamber to the actual leachate pond itself, then there'd be alarms triggering. And then we'd be responding at that point, we'd be monitoring. And then if it got to a point, we'd already be responding, but if it got to a point where it was then overflowing from the leachate pond back to the chamber, with the risk of it going to the stormwater pond, then there'd be more alarms going off, and at that point we would isolate the stormwater pond. So there will be procedures in place to respond to different alarms at different times.
Thanks, Nigel.
Mayor Luca.
When would this landfill have been closed? Probably in the 80s, is it?
2009.
Oh, 2009. Do we have good records for how much that has cost us post-closure? I mean, once you told me that it costs $100 million to establish a landfill, but how much does it cost ongoing? Because it's quite amazing how...
So basically, there's ongoing monitoring. The ongoing monitoring resource consent is, I couldn't give you an exact figure, but I would say around 20,000 a year. Monitoring costs, that's most of the consultant costs to do the monitoring, laboratory costs. Most of the expense, as outlined in the report, have been responsive works from the weather events over the past sort of 5 to 6 years, and that was 2019 105,000, 2023 256,000, and in the last year 240,000 to date. So that's where most of the expense has been. We also have a lease cost on the land as well, which is 31,000 a year.
So our present landfill, or what we're using as a landfill, how much capacity has that got? We have to...
This is the one at Turitea.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I took a party, sorry, I just mentioned this, when I was working for a district, Whakatāne were interested, so we took the board up in a bus trip and spoke to the people who run, it was Leach's Quarry in those days. The quarry was sending out around about 80,000 cubic metres of crushed rock a year, so they were consented, allowed to take about that much, and that was about the optimum amount. If you had less than 80,000 cubes, you didn't have the customer base, the income, and they were charging $90 a cubic metre at the gate. So, like councils from Pauriki, Whakatāne, sending stuff up there, so they had to pay the transport costs on top of that. And they were getting income from gas, which they had a turbine on site and put it into the network when the high price was right, and also they're selling rock, but they still needed that $90 a tonne. So you can see it's big business, and at the time the councils looked at joining up, and at that time we looked at 23 sites in the district, and because of the combined volume, even with bringing Gisborne, because Gisborne sends its stuff too to Turitea. It's such a long trip, I know, but it's the only way they could get it. That combined effort was not enough to sustain a landfill in the Whakatāne district, so you can the idea.
So Turitea landfill has basically in the Environment Court in the last couple of months has basically lost its application to extend, was rejected by the Environment Court and the Appeal Court. So basically, the actual capacity, they haven't quite worked out the capacity at the moment. What they have said is that they can guarantee the terms of our contract and disposal until 2000, which is until 2031.
Okay.
So after that point, it will be a different situation. We don't know. But for the term of that contract, they've guaranteed our disposal and continue rates of disposal as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just a little one. So the leachate ends up in our sewer system and ends up in our sewage ponds, right? So then it will end up sitting in the sludge at the bottom. So we then end up every 10 or 15 years pumping that sludge, getting that sludge over to the worm farm. Does that worm farm then deal to the leachate?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question. I'm not involved in that sludge management. So I don't know where it's going.
Thank you.
Councillor Riles.
Thank you, Chair. The 3.4 million that we hold in that reserve account, is that account still growing?
That's part of the annual review process. So technically what you should do when you have an operating landfill or when you're building a landfill, you should be thinking about what your responsibilities are after you close it. And so you should be setting aside funds and capitalising those funds, capitalising it and depreciating to the point of closure. So at the point of closure you have no asset value, but you have a big provision for your 35 years of aftercare. What we're experiencing here and probably across the country is what we estimated at the time our landfills were open around what our aftercare compliance requirements are is woefully insufficient to deal with the environmental risks that are appearing at the moment. So massive rainfall events, scouring and all of that sort of stuff, trying to deal with stormwater and groundwater instead of just leachate, provided its challenges. And we've had the similar thing in Te Teko with a spring that just popped up out of nowhere. So part of the process every year when we do our annual report is review the provision that we have. And it's a conversation that we have every year with auditors. What is the justification for the increase that we're putting in there? And we start to look at all of the investment that we've put into the closed landfills and have conversations as a sector. What are others experiencing? There's a piece of work that I've kicked off with auditors. So I've had a conversation with our audit partner, just signalling, look, I don't think 35 years of aftercare is going to be sufficient anymore. What is their view around landfill aftercare provisions and the accounting standards that align with those? So if we're going to have to look after and monitor a landfill for another 30 years, how do we make sure our provisions are appropriate? So it's a new issue for the country, and there hasn't been a lot of advice provided. So what we're trying to do is get LGNZ or the sector to come up with some advice to support local government in making sure we've got appropriate provisions to deal with these ever increasing challenges.
Some years ago we were looking at a possible landfill site out Te Teko way. Do we have any funding put aside for that, or would that have come out of this particular fund?
So we have, so the provision is one big pool, but underneath it, we have calculations for every one of our closed landfills. So ultimately, it's a provision for each, but it just reports it as one big number.
it just states here it's in its closed landfill provisions. That's why I wondered whether that was the entire fund or a part of thereof.
I think the 3 point was the entire, or is that what we've got for Burma?
3.5.
Thank you.
I've got one last question, but before I do, Janine, we're going to have a break after this item, so, and would you guys like to come back at 10:15, save you waiting there? Thank you. So my question is a bit of a left field one really, but would we ever get to the point where we'd have to dig it all out and take it away?
That's an unknown. I mean, it has happened at other landfills. I don't think it's likely to happen at Burma Road. It's just an unknown.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that, with the monitoring we're going to do, we're going to be directly monitoring the leachate, and so what we've talked about with the regional council is doing that over a long term to see if it's going to be diminishing. An interesting fact is about 2002 or 3, the regional council, so the landfill was operating at this time, and we had very limited controls of leachate in those days. The regional council asked us to monitor the stream, and we were ticking along very nicely. And then all of a sudden, about 2002, they said, oh, all the fish life has disappeared between the top of the Wairere waterfall and cemetery, and we believe it's leachate. So we did all the tests in the world we could, and we found there'd been no sharp change. But what we found out was that in 2000, Horizon had gifted the council all these lights to go on the waterfall, and the fish expert told us that what that did was it stopped the night migration of these little fish, so they wouldn't go upstream. So when we turned the lights off, fish could go back, and everything came back to normal. So, in those days, the leachate wasn't an issue, and I think probably just from an engineer's point of view, some people think of leachate as the sort of gooey stuff that would burn a hole in your hand or whatever. But in reality, the water is 99% of the product that's flowing, and it's only very small amounts of stuff. So as long as if we can keep that monitoring going, we can avoid that issue, I believe, of heaven forbid having to remove it all.
So no further question or clarification. The recommendations are on page 28 of the agenda, and that recommendation is that the Burma Road closed landfill use of closed landfill provision for proposed works report be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor James. Councillor Rangiho. Thank you. Is there any debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. That's carried. Thank you, gentlemen. So what we'll do is it's 10:04, so we'll take a break till 10:15 or thereabouts.
Yeah, we're not recording.
Trouble when you
Welcome back, everybody. Just remembering that we're live streaming, so phones off and or silent or whatever it is. So we're now on item 6.3, which is Manatā Wastewater Project Update May 2024, pages 40 to 46. So welcome, team. Is David, you leading or what do you want?
Janine and Jess,
The floor is yours.
So, hi everyone. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Matata in the last few weeks, so I'm not going to go into detail, and I'll take the report and read if that's okay. But I just thought I'd give an update since we came and had the workshop with you, and then obviously you had the hearings. The Tanaitanga o Matata o Te Arawa Co-Design Group also went and presented to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council plan. We strategically took the last slot on the day here in Whakatane and ended up having an hour discussion with the council. So we had a really good discussion, and just on behalf of the co-design group, the presentation and we had Gavin and Puroto up at the table with me, and we had a number of women behind in the chambers, and in all honesty, we probably couldn't have presented the project better in terms of what was delivered. So I just want to acknowledge all the work with the co-design group and the way that that project was presented to the regional council hearings.
Are there any highlights you want to make them out of your report?
No, I think it's probably just business as usual at the moment.
So, questions of clarification, anybody? You, Luca?
Well, I've got some technical questions which I'll put in writing at a later date, but I'm going to park that for now. The options analysis. Part of the option, one of the criteria, I suppose, that will be addressed will be costs for the various options, 0 through to whatever. And costs concern me quite a lot these days. And I look at the reporting that's just come out of Rotorua Lakes Council on the Rotoiti sewage debacle, if you want to call it that. $14,000 per household is blown out to $88,000. And maybe this is not the time for this conversation, but costs will be included, and they need to be as close to final costs as possible in the options analysis. But I certainly wouldn't like to be in the position of these Rotoiti Lake residents who are now faced with a bill of $88,000 per household. But we haven't really talked about how the $35 million that's in our long-term plan is going to be sheeted home to ratepayers, and which ratepayers are going to pay. And although I wasn't at your presentation, we were addressing a similar issue with the chief executive at the presentation that we made on behalf of council earlier on in the day. And Kevin Winters asked the obvious question about targeted rates and all of the rest of it. A small group of residents, big costs. How is that really going to be paid for? But I'm not sure if you guys are the people that really should.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rotoiti Rotomara is that's a targeted rate on just those residents, isn't it, for that scheme?
Sorry?
So the Rotoiti Rotomara scheme, I understand, is not an equalised scheme across the whole of the Rotorua district, whereas obviously the intention in the current infrastructure strategy and long-term plan for Matata is that it forms part of the equalised scheme. So that impact is actually across all, except for Murupara, is across all of the Whakatane district, covering, as they already do for other schemes that are in Whakatane and other parts of the district. So it would form part of the equalised scheme, so it'll be across all ratepayers. It'll be funded differently to the Rotoiti Rotomara scheme.
Well, our answer to Kevin Winters was that the targeted rate option is still on the table and was up for discussion. So I guess we'll have that discussion at some point in the future.
So currently in your long-term plan you have half of the funding of our project in there, and the other half have been indicated for external support, and that includes the 6.7 million that we need to uplift from the Ministry of Health is in that 50%.
We're also asking the Bay of Plenty Regional Council.
We did ask the Bay of Plenty Regional Council for money, and we will still be formally reporting to them once our so the options analysis is all being worked on because the business case is being written right now, and that will all come back to you to see that, and that has full costings, including what we're doing is the original costings. Obviously, we're trying to lock the land down right now. Once that land is formally locked down, we can do a full updated costing. So it'll be, rather than in $2023, it'll be June 2024 dollars, and that at that point. But we have built contingency in your long-term plan to accept that there would be a 12-month update in terms of those numbers as we were heading into a discussion around resource consent.
So we will do everything humanly possible to avoid
I think
something
I won't go into it here, but there's quite a lot of detail behind what's happened over there. I probably would just have a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rolls.
Janine, just a correction there, you said that it would be sheeted across the whole of the Whakatane district. That would be for the catchments that are on reticulated sewage. To make that clear.
Yes, on whoever's concluded in the equalised scheme at the moment, Matata would form part of the equalised scheme.
Thank you.
And we will be having the same conversations with Para when we need to invest significant money.
I have a bit of a crystal ball question, really, and it's related to what happened last time. But are we confident once the resource consent is approved that we won't be lost in appeals?
So I guess we've been 2.5 years on the journey, and from day one in full co-design. At this point, I haven't come across not one person, not one, that has raised dissent to the project. We can never control somebody coming out of the woodwork, quite often not even living in that area, but we have done everything humanly possible with this project, including in full co-design with iwi and hapu, to ensure that we have the strongest possible position heading into the resource consent.
I'm sure you've got robust things in place because it was just a pity last time round.
There was a few faults to last time around, and we reviewed that and took on board what the judge raised, and we have rectified that from day one, especially the co-design approach.
Councillor Dennis?
Just in relation to what you said, Chairman Poller, last time there was communication with a small group of iwi. This time all iwi are consulted with. This time iwi are on the co-design governance group. This time it's nowhere near water. We're doing land-based, and this time it's in the treaty settlement for Ngāti Rangatahi. So there's a whole lot of, it's a different animal this time, Mr. Chairman, and so...
The land sites are very, very different.
Thank you. Any further questions? Clarification? So we've got the recommendation on page 40 of the agenda. I'll read it out, that the Matata Wastewater Project Update May 2024 report be received. So I have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Boynton and Councillor Jukes. Any debate? You've got it covered pretty well. Appreciate the work you're doing.
Nearly there. Fingers crossed.
So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Yeah, you're still
You're still here. Still here.
So we have the 6.4, item 6.4, the Three Waters Consent Replacement Strategy. So floor's yours again, Janine. It's page 47 to 70 of the agenda.
I'll probably introduce it. So, I mean, you're all very well aware of the massive amount of work for the consent renewals that we've got coming up in a very short space of time to get underway with it. I think you probably wished we'd started yesterday. So, in order to hit the ground running, what we're putting up in front of you is a plan, a strategy around how we're going to get underway. and what roles we think are required. So in the LTP, we identified that we need 6 roles for this piece of work, all to be capitalised, so funded by the capital project. When it came down to it, we don't think we're going to be able to fill all of those roles with staff. So we've made some need 6 people, whether they're employed by council or contracted, to get underway with this program. It's a program of work. So what we're seeking approval from you is to frame up the JDs, get things out to market, so we've got the best chance of trying to get underway. The program outlines the approach around how we're going to manage the consent work and how we're going to divvy that up. It also identifies the structure that we want to put in place in terms of how this is all going to work. So we've got a project team with the resources that we're going to be bringing in, but also existing resources that we're going to be contributing to that project. And it's going to follow a good project management structure similar to what we implemented for the Three Waters reform process and the work streams that we were managing around with DIA. Sitting above that will be a project steering group or a project governance group, which will need to be flexible and be able to meet sort of on an ad hoc basis to provide steering guidance and advice to the project group. So the teams that are on the ground working, they may need to be able to meet at short notice just to when issues pop up, so that they can provide the team a bit of a steer. We're looking for some skill sets. So when you think about what are the key risks to this all falling over, it's failure to undertake good partnership with iwi. So we want to make sure that there's that expertise sitting on that steering group. Are you heading in the direction of a good partnership? So we want to be able to have that at that steering group. We want to have an independent that brings a national kind of perspective to all of these conversations that are happening around the country. We don't want to be reinventing the wheel. Reinventing the wheel is really expensive. Yeah. So we need somebody that has that expertise and can say, I know a council down the road that's gone through a very similar processes. Here's some of the stuff that we can pick up and learn and pass that information through to the team. We also need someone with some environmental and strategic kind of views, because ultimately at the end of the day we're going to be discharging somewhere, whether it's to land, to sea, ocean up, or to fresh water like we are now. So it'll be good to have someone with some environmental expertise sitting on that committee as well. So thinking about what are the key risks we try to mitigate and make sure we're setting up the structure to be as successful as possible. That steering group won't have any delegations or financial delegations or anything like that. It'll just be providing advice, and we expect that group to report through to this committee. Just like the Matata wastewater reports through to this committee on progress over the last 7 weeks, this PSG project steering group will report through to this committee as well, and we would see it as a standing item with an update on how the program's going. That's probably it for me, and I don't know if there's any gaps in terms of detail or anything you want to add, but just happy to answer any questions and see whether we can get going.
Okay, so questions of clarification, Mayor Luca?
Well, I'm very concerned about finances, and we've got 40 new FTEs on our LTP. There's 6 of them. Given that under the present government, the regulatory bar is unlikely to be raised, I mean, we had some assurances about that from Simeon Brown. They're very cognizant of the fact that the more stringent you make regulations, the more the costs blow out. If the regulatory environment were to stay the same, then, or change very little, our consent renewals would be relatively similar to what they are now. And therefore, when I look at, I don't have a good idea of what it requires to put in a consent application, but I've looked at some of the consent documents that are available, on BOPRC's website. Does it really work for 6 additional people? Because if the regulatory framework doesn't change, it doesn't seem to me that it's going to be that onerous.
Good questions there. I think the regulatory framework has increased from what it has historically, right? So we're at a certain point of around the regulations.
And the RMA
I
is
think
not changing.
they won't reduce. So they won't increase, but they definitely won't reduce either. No. So I think we need to make sure that we're resourcing to be successful in delivery. If what you say happens, then we'll just deliver faster. Right? So we're still going to need the resource because we have a complex environment with eight iwi to engage with in a number of different consents. So we've got stormwater consents, we've got wastewater consents, we've got water consents. So you still kind of need the breadth of expertise to deal with it. If the environment becomes less regulated, you just deliver it faster. So I think we've got to separate the financing part of it because it's all part of the project. We're not rating for these up front. These are going to be capitalised expenditure as part of the project. And if the regulatory environment changes and makes it easier, then ultimately it makes the cost of the project easier. It doesn't change what you need to deliver it.
No, I'm not saying that the regulatory environment is going to become more lax, but they are aware of, because if you do raise the bar, then the costs are going to be much higher, and that means people have got to pay for it, which is what we were just talking about with the Maratā sewage thing, and those extra costs will have to come, they will sheet back to people, and people are already under pressure. So, but anyway, you're convinced that 6 people is what's required and we can't repurpose people and that sort of thing?
We could repurpose people, but you would need to give up something in your BAU. And the people that you would repurpose will be coming out of our consenting team and coming out of our Three Waters team. So we've just gone through a process to set an LTP, which is a step up from what it has been historically. So I think you'd have to give something up to repurpose internally.
And I would say further to that is that one of the things, one of the many reasons, it's a very complex environment, but one of the many reasons we haven't progressed many of those consents is because of our capacity internally, because we have not resourced it. Programs, we've known since 2000 that we've needed to get into that consent work. So I applaud Bevan for bringing this to the table and having an active program management to make sure that we're making progress. But one of the key issues is we've just not had the capacity internally to be able to do this work. Because our BAU program is so stretched, and I'm looking across at Glen Cooper, and we just can't keep continuing to stretch the existing number of people we've got who are just being able to deliver the BAU program. And it's also often a different set of skills to move through complex consenting environments. And as you know, Mayor Victor, there's not only the environmental regulator through Taumata Arawai Regional Council, but now the economic regulator will be coming in through this period of time too. So it will be a more complex regulatory environment, and the standards that are expected now are very different from when the RMA came into place and these consents were sought in the early 90s. So the environment has changed over this 30-year period already significantly. It's likely to increase in the next coming years, and so I think it's a team that is working in a much more complex environment.
That's right.
Is my view. So. And that's why it requires capacity to actually be able to complete the program.
Councillor Boyd.
I just have a question. If we do have sufficient or strong capacity within the teams to be able to get through the work, and if it's a matter of, and I'm sorry if I get this wrong, of being able to process consents not just for our own work, but does that also support the processing of consents for those developers who are coming into the region or have projects that would boost the township? Is that part of it too?
I think, no, we'll have our BAU consenting resources for that, but it is a good point though. So whatever we start to frame up in terms of a consent for, say, Whakatane or Hopi wastewater, needs to factor in growth and the developers coming in. So I think it'll indirectly benefit, but not directly, because they'll have enough work to do with the program of works ahead of them.
I'm just trying to see the bigger part of it in terms of that if we are able to have a team that's sufficiently able to go across. I think the issue is, Councillor Boynton, that we need to make sure we've got consented wastewater and drinking water across the district that supports and enables the residential development or commercial development that is going to be attracted into the Eastern Bay. We're in a very difficult situation if we're not consented for those critical pieces of infrastructure to cope with the growth. How we set ourselves up internally to deal with consent applications is something actually that David Bewley and Bevan and I have been working through recently to make sure we've got a really, really integrated, collaborative approach to managing complex consents that will come through, that will likely come through in the next couple of years from quite significant economic development growth projects. So it's a really good question. The best thing we can do is make sure, I think at this stage, is make sure our infrastructure is in place to actually cope with growth.
Well, sorry to carry on and to supplement you. Just also too, because it means that if you have more developers and more growth, and then you're going to have more people who can pay rates. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies again. Rugby Park irrigation. Is that actually a wastewater scheme or a consent? I'm not sure.
So that's just a very low water take consent. That will be resourced by just a project planner, but still needs to come out of BAU. But it's quite a straightforward.
And any potential changes with the Rexmoor precinct? This will obviously enhance it, or is it costed into that, or is this completely different cost centre?
My understanding is it's separate, but I suppose as part of the process we would need to touch base with the people that actually utilise that irrigation to understand whether they need more water or whether we're just applying for the same amount or whether there's other needs in terms of their water take.
But that wouldn't be, supplementary. But you said it's low importance or easy to fix or easy to consent?
Yeah, there's five water consents that we deem are low in terms of the resourcing required to deliver. So they've been packaged and they will sit with one project manager and they will nail those pretty quickly.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personally, I would like to be able to say that we should push this back 10 years because we can't afford it now, but we've already pushed back the resource consents for our sewage systems, and now we're backed into a corner. We can't go anywhere, and we're actually causing damage to the environment, and especially that Edgecombe sewage system is just disgusting, also the Taniatu one. I don't think we've got any option. We actually need to get on and do it. It pains me to say it, but whatever it takes, we need to do it. I think it's, during our submissions, Three Waters was one of the most talked about things as a priority, and it's just a pity we couldn't have done it 10 years ago, but I don't think we've got an option. We have to look after our environment, we have to look after our drinking water, the storm water we have to sort out because it's just destroying people's places and lives, and so I think we need to do it.
Councillor O'Brien.
At what stage can we utilise the spatial plan resource policy hub and the resources within that? When do we trigger those resources? Can they assist in this space?
So I would say we've agreed with the partners in that hub that those two significant work programs of the spatial plan and the climate change framework is the initial focus of that resourcing. Councillor O'Brien, but what I would say is that I think the work that's been done in that hub will be really critical for informing the engagement process through all of these respective consents as they're developed up and as the projects are optioneered, as that engagement with iwi and Hapu is carried out. The work that's done through that hub, particularly for the spatial planning perspective, but also the climate change work, will actually inform this work. So that's why that hub was really a great thing, I think, to set up, because it's providing that really concerted effort which provides all that background work that can inform a number of key aspects of, including the waters consent, the water strategy. Yeah, so it's definitely related.
I think the other thing is if you use that resource, they wouldn't be able to do anything else. This is big.
Don't underestimate the scale of this piece of work, I guess is what we're saying.
I think the angst is increasing staff when government are telling everybody they're shedding staff, and so it doesn't look good on our part in some ways. And you've got to do what you've got to do, I suppose. But my question is, are the people that you're talking about, these 6 extra, are they full-time on this project, or are they part-time and can be done somewhere else, or how does that work?
So at this point they are deemed full-time. And what I will say is, being program manager, who was into part of that 6 at the moment, is that once we form the plan and get really clear on what we are doing, then a core part of that will be making sure that the job is sized appropriately. And if at any point in time we felt that there was a bit of give or a bit of capacity inside those roles, then we're going to be definitely doing something about it. I think the joy of having, 3 are deemed to be full-time, and then 3 are contractors. The joy with having contractors is you can be agile with the structure of that and the structure of ours.
I think it'll be in the story you tell, to be fair, so that people understand, because that's the biggest thing we're getting at the moment, as you'll appreciate us.
Yeah, and look, I totally hear that, and then I work a lot in central government as well. I think the issue that you've had is with the repeal of the Three Waters reform and Three Waters coming back. Or well, part of it didn't leave, but the responsibility now sits squarely with local government, then the responsibility of the consenting sits squarely with you. And I don't think we're going to see a change in the next 3 years with how we want this, even with how we deal with local water done well. So in essence, those resources possibly, if you didn't have Three Water reforms, would have already been in place and working on things like this already. So I will make sure that we're working hard. But there are some big projects in there. Like the waste, as we know, learning through Matata, that the wastewater consenting is really challenging in New Zealand to meet all the new rules and regulations. We've got some tricky projects to land.
So you've got to do it right. So
to do it right and get the right skills.
We always wanted to have a handle on it ourselves, really, and so now we've got it. We need to do something about it. Probably so. Okay, any further points of clarification?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just talking about the 2 elected member representatives.
Governance group, so
I think we'll get to that in some other discussion, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thanks. So if there's no further points of clarification, sorry, we've got someone else.
I had my hand up, but it was the same question as Councillor Mick, so it's fine.
We're going to cover that in a minute.
Yeah.
So the recommendations are on page 47 of the agenda. Now, what I propose is that we deal with 1 and 2 together. With item 3 and 4, there's some more work to be done, really, in enlarging on the discussion, and I'll ask Bevan to do that when we get to that point, if you don't mind, and then we can either change the resolution or approve whatever we're going to do, but we can get that done by the end of the day. So we've 1 and 2, which is 1 is receive the Three Waters consent replacement strategy report and approve the draft Three Waters consent replacement strategy, including support for the high level work program. So do I have a mover and a seconder for those two? Have we got any debate around those? If there's not, then I'm happy to. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So my concern with 3 and 4 was that I felt there wasn't enough information around those, and so discussion with Bevan this morning, he has got some more views around that to enlarge on what we'd like. So do you would like to just expand on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I briefly touched on it earlier around the structure of the project team, the role of the project steering group or the governance group, and how it interacts with the infrastructure and planning committee, and how it would steer and direct or provide advice to staff. So what we've looked at in terms of the roles, we suggest that the chair is Councillor John Puller, with the connection through to infrastructure and planning. We've suggested an additional elected member. We've got we're suggesting an expert independent with that can bring that national water, wastewater consent kind of overview to reduce that risk that we're reinventing the wheel. We're wanting somebody on that committee that will represent and provide advice around the partnership with iwi perspective as one of the other risks that we need to manage, and then the other skill set I think we would like to have in that is some of that environmental review or monitoring perspective through to that project. So there'll be some governance support on that structure as well. So what we're doing is wanting to seek some nominations really, and where we can sort of make sure that the project steering group has the appropriate skill sets to support the team.
So it's really the governance group. So what's the role, and are we covering all of the consents that are listed here, including the ones at Murupara and Tanata that are already started?
Yep. So that we've started pieces of work around engagement, but I think we've been dealing with that through BAU resources. So what we're wanting to do is, with the new resource, have a very tight, structured program and management approach to it, and Jean will be managing that team. And we think because of the complexity of it and the issues and experience brought to the table from the Matata project, that we need a steering group, a governance group that sits over the top, that can sort of meet regularly and point the team or direct the team in the right direction.
Bevan, can I just add to that, perhaps from the councillor's perspective, Councillor Puller this is the strategic group across that entire program. So it's the view of council across the program of work as they're all developed, rather than you'll have individual project teams working on the individual consents. But this is the strategy group thinking, so that you've got confidence across the district that there's a bit of an integrated, coherent approach, because it has impact on communities, financial implications, the standards we're trying to meet, how it affects economic development, that you've got your heads over that as a strategic group. And it's, well, as Bevan's saying, meet too frequently, probably have quite an in-depth conversations for the full council to do that, but really good discipline for us to have a steering group with your view. Kind of similar to what we did for, it's a little bit broader and more strategic, but similar to what we did for the Civic Centre upgrade, similar to what you're doing in Matata, although that's a specific project. This is a program of works, and we'd like a couple of you with a real eye and a focus on that, to provide that strategic oversight and governance oversight. Bevan's described a very competent technical team and a project team, including Janine, but we need really good governance over it.
And just a clarification, the Mayor is ex officio part of it.
Okay, so do we understand the proposed governance structure?
Yes.
So let's move that now then, that we approve.
Have you move?
Proposed governance structure moved by Councillor Duke, seconded. Deputy Mayor, all those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
That's carried, thank you. Now, nominations for elected member representative, and so we have myself and you ex officio as Councillor Rangiaho. Would you be prepared to be on that committee or on that governance structure?
If no one else is going to put me, I would
Be happy to
raise
nominate.
my hand to.
I'd be happy to nominate Councillor Rangiaho.
So Councillor Rangiaho is nominated by Mayor Emmett as seconder for the nomination. Councillor Dennis, are there any further nominations? I guess before we put that, is that people can be co-opted if needed. Is that how it's going to work?
Just take a pragmatic approach to that. You just want the group to be of a size that is constantly working together and is a group that can make decisions and move forward effectively.
So that's our side of the thing together. What happens with these externals? How does that all work? In terms of appointment.
Yeah, so what we'll pull together a bit of a list of who we think we could shoulder tap, and I think it would be worthwhile bringing through to the steering group for decision.
That goes through a normal project process as well, like we've done for Rex Morpeth, like we've done for Matata. It will require a procurement process, but it would be good to give the governance group insight as to the rationale for both the terms of reference that will be set out in asking for requests for, you set out a request for interest, basically, expressions of interest, sorry, is what I'm trying to say, and then procure from there, and it would be really good to work through the governance structure, the rationale for the work, the criteria that goes into the document that outlines the expression of interest.
So just following on from how this project works, so this group here, the steering group, will make recommendations to the governance group. Is that right? And then they will be acted upon and then come up to this committee. Is that how you?
So there'll be the program team. So there'll be all the project leads and then me with the program team, and we will report through to the governance structure, so through to yourselves, and a lot of that is to seek direction and guidance on some of the critical issues we're dealing with, and then we would agree with you the critical parts we then update this committee on every 7 weeks. So we may find that we could structure the governance meeting as before each of the IPC meetings, where we can make sure that we're getting good direction around what then gets formally reported through to this committee. But my understanding would be all decisions are still made at this committee level, but the steering group or the governance group gives that program team good direction on some of the critical or tricky issues we're dealing with or trying to implement the program.
Yeah, I think it's important to, we're probably using the term steering group and governance group interchangeably. They're the same group, one is not another two. So there's 3 layers: project team, governance, steering group, infrastructure and planning committee. So infrastructure and planning committee will be where the conversations, recommendations come through that need any delegation or financial sort of budget or anything like that.
Just we understand where we are with that.
Can I ask a question on this, please? Is that, given the history of the Matata group, where we ended up changing it from using the terminology governance to the terminology co-design, would it be better to use delivery rather than bring that through this if it has implications?
I think, so the challenge with this is across district. So there'll be co-design happening individually, but we won't be here doing co-design at the at the governance group level.
Forget about the co-design, should we call it the steering committee or something like that? It's just a thought. If you're happy with the governance, I'm happy with governance.
We got a little bit caught, well, not caught, we had a good debate with our co-design members and they recommended co-design, iwi and hapu, and I think we're saying is there's certain rules around structures, so we just probably wouldn't do it in the reference.
Okay, well look, let's just close this off then, and so with item 4 we have Councillor Rangiaho has been nominated as the additional member, so all those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
An opportunity for comment, discussion on any of it?
We've had some debate, but if you want to have some more.
I'd just like to emphasise the issue of cost escalations again. Because, you know, it's important to define problem properly, to ask whether or not harm is being done. Is there a point of diminishing returns? I mean, you know, you can spend a lot of money and get not much more for it. Is the environment and public health being protected? So if costs escalate, it's a public health issue because you're putting pressure on people, and we've already lived in a country where, you know, some of our stats are not very good, and a lot of it's got to do with financial pressures. So I just say we've got to keep this sort of thing, you know, front of mind.
And I think, Mayor Luca, I think that'll be the role of all these groups actually, to keep it, and it's in front of mind, I'm absolutely sure it will.
Look, it'd be interesting to see. I have heard that something's coming out today on local water done well. Let's see what comes out. It'd be interesting to see what's coming. I think with this group we will keep a very, very close eye, and obviously working with all the leaders going through the Three Waters Reform team, and all the leaders through that, we will make sure we are well involved in anything that's going on in that discussion, because at the end of the day, what we're going to do is look to get consents, and getting consents they have conditions, and conditions cost to implement. We will be very clear about that the whole way through the program.
When you say something's coming out, are they going to make some sort of policy statement?
I think there's something coming out around the budget.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's the budget, but I think there might be also around
the policy.
Yeah.
Such a drop.
Finally, we'll.
Unless my contacts in Wellington are wrong, but I think there may be something coming today with the budget. So fingers crossed, because it'd be nice to see some movement in the area.
So before we close off with Councillor O'Brien, are we all happy with where we're at? Anything else we need to know? Well, if not, I'm happy to invite Councillor O'Brien to close the meeting.
Kia ora tātou. Ka unui tātou. Ka tunga mana ki tangata mangaro I runga I tēnā I tēnā mātou. Tō mahe ai te hua maki hiki, toi te kupu, toi te manaka ia, toi ngā tikunga ko ia, te whakaihia, te whakawātea. Au mie, mie.
Thank you, everyone.